Thanks for attending our webinar today. My name is Eric Wyant. I'm a principal consultant with LPA Systems, and we're going to talk today about Cognos Active Reports. First thing we'll do is talk about active reports in general, what they are, talk about the use cases and value proposition for deploying active reports in your organization. We'll take a look at an active report and some of the controls. We'll go through the exercise of converting a standard Report Studio report to an active report. We'll take a look at a number of the interactive properties that are available, and then go into some general tips for development as well as iPad design considerations. So just what is an active report? Well, first off, an active report is disconnected. An IBM Cognos Active Report is a standalone, self-contained file. This allows users to interact with the content in their reporting application without being dependent on connectivity to the BI server. It's also highly interactive. Active report controls enable a new level of interactive behavior. The flexibility provided by the report controls allow a single reporting application to meet the needs of many users, eliminating the need to customize reports to suit personal viewing preferences. An active report is portable and self-contained. Business users need access to their BI information regardless of their location, connectivity, or consumption device. The same IBM Cognos Active Report can be consumed in standard web browsers and on the Apple iPad while connected or disconnected from the network. This ensures business users always have the Cognos BI content available at their fingertips. Additionally, active report content can be consumed in business insight workspaces or for those already on 10.2 Cognos workspaces. Access to details on demand are available by leveraging drill-through capabilities while connected to the IBM BI server. A standard user can leverage the performance and interactivity of an active report without sacrificing easy access to details via drill-through. And last but not least, the active report leverages the existing IBM Cognos platform. Cognos Report Studio is used to create active reports. The ability to create an active report is a standard part of the IBM Cognos 10 professional author license. Current reports can be converted into interactive reporting applications, potentially reducing the amount of time to build. Active report content respects all existing IBM Cognos platform security features. So when a user in Cognos Connection runs an active report, or when an administrator schedules and bursts one, all role-based security policies are honored so that each user will consume a reporting application that contains only the data they are authorized to view. So what is the value proposition? Some of the ideal use cases for Cognos Active Reports include enabling the mobile workforce. Business users expect to be able to consume their business information at any time, regardless of their location or what device they're using. Active reports enable the mobile workforce by allowing the exact same reporting application to be consumed on the Apple iPad as well as in a standard web browser. When combined with the disconnected nature of the solution, active reports ensure that users have the right information to make business decisions while on the go. Managed dashboards. Business users expect visually appealing, high-performance, and highly interactive dashboards that are able to communicate key business information. A wide variety of active report controls ensures that the desired functionality can be achieved and engaging end-user experience can be delivered to business users. The resulting reporting applications are high-performance, standalone MHT or MIME hypertext files. Active reports allow business users' most common data to be presented in an interactive fashion while also providing a simple path for driving a deeper analysis. And finally, extending BI to external customers or partners. Businesses can improve their relationship with customers and increase synergies with their partners by improving the flow of information to external users. Active report technology allows interactive reports to be distributed outside the organization without having to worry about granting those users access to their IBM Cognos server. The solution provides a scalable and secure way of sharing information outside the organization without creating an increased support burden. Deploying active reports can be accomplished in a number of ways. Via email distribution, active report content can be distributed through secure corporate email, which then allows the recipients to fully interact with all of the data regardless of their connectivity to the BI server. Scheduling and bursting can be used to ensure this operation occurs at a non-peak server time to reduce system loads. The native iPad application supports email distribution such that when a user is sent a reporting application as an attachment to the email, the file will be associated with the IBM Cognos mobile iPad app and can be directly launched into the environment. The output will then be saved within the application for offline consumption. For mobile distribution, IBM Cognos mobile native iPad app has the ability to pull Cognos Active Report content to the device in several ways in addition to email. Scheduling and bursting can be used to send content directly to an end user's iPad. After the report is run on the Cognos server, the mobile service transfers the report output to the iPad as soon as the user logs in from their device. Once the content is transferred, it becomes available for offline consumption. Alternatively, the Cognos connection folder structure can be browsed from the native iPad application, and the user can choose to run any active report that they are authorized to access. After running the report, it will be stored locally on the iPad and available for disconnected consumption. Since active reports are standalone files, they can be shared on a network share or network accessible location. Since active report output is an MHT file, the output can be placed in a shared location and made accessible to anyone who has access to this location. Security can be provided via password or login credentials for the remote location so that only people who are authorized to view the content have access to the report. This deployment scenario eliminates the need to email copies of the file to every recipient. And finally, IBM Cognos Connection, as with standard IBM Cognos reports, active report content also resides in the Cognos connection. Assuming the user has proper permissions, users can easily navigate to the location of the report and gain access to the reporting application. The user can choose to view an existing saved output, rerun the report to get the freshest data possible. By leaving the reports in Cognos connection, every user must authenticate with their IBM Cognos server before gaining access. If the end user has not manually downloaded the report from the Cognos connection to their local machine, the content will be inaccessible while disconnected from the server. Okay, I'm now going to switch away from the slides for a bit so we can take a look at an active report in Report Studio. Okay, I've gone to the Cognos Samples folder and opened a sample active report called New Order Methods. At first glance, it really looks like a traditional Report Studio report. Nothing in Report Studio immediately gives it away that it's any different. However, let's take a look at a couple of the differences. First off, we're going to look at the toolbox. When building an active report, there are a number of new controls incorporated within the toolbox, specifically at the bottom of the toolbox. You'll see things such as decks, data decks, tab controls, button bars, etc. These are all the controls or interactive components that give the application-like look and feel to an active report. One of the other things you might notice is, in addition to things like a list object, there is a checkbox group on here, but this is a checkbox group unique to active reports. There are also these little icons next to each object on the page. These are the controls we use to basically define the interactive behavior and how prompt objects or button objects interact with other objects on the page, such as lists, charts, etc. Okay, I'm going to run this report. And we can see it runs pretty quickly. In this particular case, the radio buttons or the checkboxes actually are multi-selectable. And by toggling them on and off, they filter the list that's being displayed below. So the whole key here is there are queries behind the scenes populating both the prompt object and the list, very similar to a standard Report Studio report. However, everything is being packaged and assembled so that it can interact and execute when it's disconnected and the MHT file has been created. Okay, so I've switched over to Report Studio and opened a standard Report Studio report. I'm just going to run this here so you can get an idea of what the functionality is. It's basically a simple cross-tab and chart display with an inline prompt. And if we change the value on the inline prompt, the report re-executes with the filtered values. Okay. So the first thing we do when we convert to an active report is under the File menu, I'm going to click the option to convert to an active report. Now once I do this, notice that the inline prompt that was present is no longer there. That's because different prompt controls are used for an active report. So the first thing I'm going to do is insert a data deck. So I go to my toolbox, scroll down to find the data deck object, and we're going to insert that just above this existing table in the report. Now a data deck acts a lot like a prompt control does, in that a data deck is connected to a query. So we still have the queries present after converting to an active report. So the existing prompt query for product line prompt, I'm just going to go ahead and reuse that for the basis of my new prompt control. So if I select query and assign this, let's give myself a little bit more real estate here. If I assign this to product line prompt, the next thing I'm going to do is I now have to place a value from the query to generate my data deck component. So in this case, I'm going to go to the product line prompt query and take the product line column and drag it into the values area. Okay, so essentially what we're setting up here is, if you can envision a deck of cards, and each card contains a different product line. Next, I'm going to drag this table that contains my list and chart into the deck area. So what I'm setting up here is I want to end up with each card in the deck displaying a different product line on the list and the chart objects. So there's some work I need to do in the queries. So I'm going to open the query editor, and let's start with the list query. One thing I don't need in the active report is I no longer need this detail filter. I actually want to run the report for all product lines. I'm not going to filter the report as it runs any longer. So I'm going to remove this detail filter. But in creating the deck object, what we eventually need to do in the next step is actually create a master detail relationship between that data deck container and the list. So I'm going to navigate over to Products, Product Line, and I'm going to add Product Line to this query. I'm going to do the same thing in the chart query. So I'm going to remove the detail filter, and I'm going to make sure I have Product Line as a column. Now that we've done this, I can return to the page and set up my master detail relationship. So with the list, I'm going to select the list, go to the properties for master detail relationships, and I'm going to set up a new link from our deck query of product line to the new product line attribute I just added to the list query. And I'm going to do the same thing for the chart. So master detail relationships property, new link from product line to product line. And OK. So now that we've set up the body of the report, the last thing I need to do is replace that prompt control that used to be here from the previous report. So I'm going to go into the toolbox. I'm going to scroll down and find a data drop-down list. And I'm just going to place that in the same block where the old inline prompt was. Now, using the same concept of reuse, query reuse, I'm going to select that drop-down list object, and I'm going to assign it to the same query that the previous prompt was using. So both our deck control and our drop-down list control will use the product line prompt query. So I'll go over to data items, take product line, and drag it to the drop-down list area. So now that we have our prompt control on the page, I need to set up a relationship between this prompt control and the data deck. Because when I run the report and I change the value in the prompt for product line, I want to essentially flip to the next card in the data deck. So to do this, I'm going to select the data deck, and I'm going to use this icon at the end of the prompt control to create a new connection. So when I create a new connection, it's going to bring me to this dialog. And in the dialog to create a connection, we always connect a source control, associate a particular behavior for select or filter. This will leave select as our behavior to select the target deck. Now we want to select the target deck when the product line selected in the source control equals the data item of product line in the target control. And we do this by creating a new variable. So we're going to have a variable called product line, and we're going to set the default value for product line to camping equipment. The reason we do this is so that when we open the report for the first time, camping equipment will be selected by default as opposed to no variable selection at all. And I click Connect to complete the connection. So now that I have my connection established between my prompt and my report objects, it's time to test the report. So I'm going to run it. And at this time, the data is being queried and everything's being pulled, all the data is being pulled into an MHT file. So the MHT file is open in the browser. And now, when we're presented with a prompt, if I change the prompt value, the display immediately changes to the filtered value. This is different than the traditional Report Studio report where the report would re-execute each time. This is actually all happening within the MHT file itself. Now we notice that the chart object is a little strange. Actually, because the MHT file renders a different image for each chart object, the values are all over the axes. So what we want to try to do here is clean that up a little bit. So to do this, I simply click on the y-axis of the chart, and under Properties, I'm going to change the option to use the range for all instances from yes to no. So that now when I run the report, the values will be more proportionately spaced based on the high-low values in the actual chart set. So when I flip from camping equipment to outdoor protection, the chart is much more readable. Okay, and that's the exercise on switching a normal Report Studio report to an active report. So now that we've looked at converting an existing Report Studio report to an active report, let's talk about building one from scratch. First of all, you need to plan the report, build the content necessary. That would be any charts, lists, crosstabs, etc. Do some basic sizing and styling to lay out the content, how you would envision the flow of the active report. And probably the most important step of all is to define the interactive behavior. Interactive behavior makes an active report distinctly unique from a standard Cognos report. These interactive behaviors are defined on almost every object in your report, both standard objects like lists, crosstabs, as well as active report-specific objects such as decks and iterators, and allow you to link the controls to each other, allowing an action to be performed on one control and to change the state of another control. Once all those connections are made, you need to test the report, and last but not least, deploy the report. So let's look at building a very quick active report on the fly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've launched Report Studio, selected the option to create a new report, and the option I'm going to use is Active Report. And I'm going to click OK. It's going to launch me into my package just like a standard Report Studio report would. And for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to use a simple list report. So I'm going to drag a list into my Canvas area. Let's go over and put some data items in here. I'm going to start with let's go with retailer region, and let's go with product line and product type. Then let's put some measures in here. Let's go for, let's say, revenue and planned revenue. Then I want to group these by region and product line. And let's put some totals here on our metrics columns. We'll just do an automatic summary. Okay. So I have the content I want to display. And next I want to install some prompt controls. So I'm going to, from the toolbox, just insert a table here above my list. I'll just go with a simple 2 columns, 1 row. And then in my toolbox, I'm going to go down and put 2 data drop-down lists in, one in each cell of the table. Data drop-down list 1 and 2. So what I want this report to do is I've got a big crosstab or a big list here by region, by product line, and then I want to selectively filter by region or product line to only display the combination of those 2 columns. So the first thing I'm going to do is go back to my insertable objects at the region level under retailers. And I'm going to drop a region into this control. And then I'm going to put product line into the other control. Then I'm going to select my list. And working with the first control, I'm going to create a connection between my region prompt and the list. So I'm going to create a new connection. And what I essentially want it to do is filter my list when the region in the prompt equals the region on the list. I'm going to create a new active report variable called region, and I'm going to set that default value. Using Americas as the default. And complete my connection. Then going to do the same thing for my product line prompt. I'm going to create a new connection where my data drop-down list 2 is going to filter my target list when product line equals product line, and I'm going to do this via an active report variable called product line. And we'll set the default value of product line to camping equipment. Okay. I click connect, and now I'm ready to test. So I'll go ahead and run this report. And what we see is our list report filtered to Americas and camping equipment by default. If I happen to change this region prompt to Central Europe, now my focus is on Central Europe. I can also change my product line. So this is a very simplistic example, given the time we have, but those are basically the steps you go through to create an active report from scratch. So with the time we have remaining, I'm going to walk through some basic design considerations and recommendations for building active reports. I guess the first thing to keep in mind is to keep the decks as simple as possible. And what I mean by this is only include data within the deck structure that you need to be unique on that card. Anything such as styling, logos, any static content that might be global to the entire report, make sure you keep it outside the deck. That will keep it from unnecessarily being duplicated throughout, and that will actually increase the size of the MHP file. So to keep the file sizes down and the performance down, try to keep those things in mind. Using a select versus a filter. In our from scratch example that we did, I know I used a filter, and when you're using a very small data set, the filter works just fine, filtering a list directly. A lot of times when you're dealing with large volumes of data, segmenting using decks and then using a select to select a specific deck as opposed to filtering a list directly will increase your performance. Users won't know the difference, the look and feel will be the same, but it should perform much better with bigger data sets. Using classes. Classes to customize the style are even more important in an active report because many copies of things get created within the MHT file itself. For example, in decks, They may not be visible all at once, but they really start to bloat the size of the report if things are being repeated, and that could even be sizing instructions, changing fonts, etc. Make sure when you're setting up your controls that you set default values. When an active report comes up, if there are no default values set for a active report variable, the report could show every column or could show no data depending on how the interactivity has been set up. So keep that in mind to make sure for a good user experience that you have a default value set when the report opens. Setting sizes is another important consideration for the user experience. Cognos generally does a really good job of formatting lists, crosstabs, etc. to fit the data that's being displayed within them. However, when you're using an active report and you're using these decks where you're switching from view to view, sometimes that can be a little annoying from an end user standpoint if the size of the chart seems to be dancing or the size of the columns dance all over the page. So setting sizes on columns, lists, and crosstabs that are being filtered, or if you're trying to use a managed dashboard, even to have the dashboard look and feel, make sure that the charts are sized specifically so that when decks are switched, the dancing behavior is minimized. Setting the size of the deck itself is another user interface consideration. If you size the size of the deck, it will minimize the swipe or animation that is involved when you are switching views. If you can avoid nesting the data containers, for instance, avoid nesting a deck within a deck. So in this example here, instead of creating a deck for products and then nesting a deck for years inside, create a single deck that is summarized on year and product line. This will minimize the size of the underlying MHT objects that get generated. Layout component references. Like in traditional Report Studio reports and using styles as well, is a quick and easy way to make design changes that limit your duplication of objects. So anywhere you can reuse a particular layout, box type, block type, etc., make sure you try to do that. Naming your controls and queries. This is especially important in a bigger, more complex active report where you may have lots of controls and interactivity going on, perhaps a button bar driving sections, and then within those sections, other controls unique to those particular decks or sections. For readability and for maintenance, just when you're trying to set up your connections between the objects, if you have them named logically, makes them a lot easier to keep track of than data deck 1, data deck 2, etc. So, good design concept there. Reusing queries is not only a good design concept for active reports, but traditional Report Studio reports as well. It can reduce the overall runtime, so the less queries that have to be generated, the quicker the report will build. Also reduces the complexity of the report in general. Another end user experience consideration is the alignment of your objects. Try to make sure text objects have consistency from a left, center, right justification standpoint, as well as top, middle, bottom. Use tables to center and control the alignment as much as possible. Once your connections are established, you can review them for proper behavior by clicking on the icon just to the right of each active report object. It will list the behaviors that have been defined, the options in terms of selects and filters, and the objects they're controlling, as well as any variable values that have been set. So, iPad design considerations. It's important to keep in mind that an iPad resolution is 1024 by 768. But in actuality, the report area that you have to work with is 1024 by 704. So your overall page size needs to be constrained within those boundaries. To eliminate moving effects, the page body object padding should be set to zeros all the way around, top, bottom, left, right. It's important to keep in mind that scrolling regions within a report may be difficult to discover on an iPad. There's no notion of scroll bars typically in the iPad world. You simply swipe from one side to the next. So if your content spans the visible portion of the page, it may be tough to discover that you actually have to swipe left or right to see what's there. The list box prompt is actually replaced with a drop-down list on the iPad. In the Apple world, that drop-down list is typically the standard interface. Consider the size of the touch regions, the controls that you place on your active report. Clickable lists and crosstabs should have rows of a minimum comfortable height to be able to press. Apple is recommending 44 pixels. Chart areas as well, your chart types. It's possible that, for instance, using bubble charts or scatter charts, bubbles may be too difficult to drill on or use as selectable objects if they're too small to touch. There is no equivalent to swiping to change decks on the desktop. So for a dual purpose active report, one that you want to use in the browser, you'll have to use a secondary control to select the cards from that deck. And it could be using an iterator, which basically provides left-right arrows and some controls to jump to the end of the list or the beginning of the list, etc. So where can you go to get more information about active reports? The Report Studio user guide that comes with the installation of Cognos 10 BI software has all of the reference material and controls, etc., documented. But one of the best sources I've found for active report knowledge is search the web for Proven Practice IBM Cognos Active Reports Cookbook, and you'll be directed to an IBM site. And the Active Reports Cookbook is really pretty good. It actually walks through each one of the new Active Report Toolbox items and actually walks you through creating a sample with each one of those. So that's about all we have today to show. I'll open it up for questions at this point.